Welcome to the Brave Journey Within with Jim and Jenn. This show is about the spiritual journey and all of the challenges, healing, wisdom, and consciousness expansion experienced along the way.
Welcome to another edition of the Brave Journey Within with Jim and Jenn. In today's episode, we're going to dive into the topic of remote viewing. And if you're not familiar, the CIA's remote viewing project and some of the skills involved in that and our experiences, but mine are with Jenn. Jenn has her own unique skill set that she's going to get into. Um, but we'll dive in now.
Yeah, I love this and I love remote viewing. And the first thing we got to do is probably describe what remote viewing even is. And so, a lot of people, when they think remote viewing, because it has the word viewing in it, that it's only a visual experience, like you're tuning into something and then you're able to see things as if you were there. It's really all the spiritual gifts, the clairvoyance, the claircognizance, clairaudience, clairsentience, all of it. It's just using all of those skills in this technique called remote viewing, and it's a very specific technique. Um,
Jenn, would you mind just kind of talking about the C's for people that are not familiar with those?
So clairvoyance is it's a clear seeing. It's being able to see visions or pictures of things in your mind. Sometimes people will have little almost like a film that plays in their mind. They'll see images, things like that, or maybe they'll see colors and things. That's clairvoyance. Clairaudience is hearing. You're able to hear. So you might hear your guides or angels, or there might be disembodied spirits, things like that, and you might be able to hear them where other people couldn't. So that's clairaudience. Claircognizance is it's clear knowing. It's you don't know how you know something, but you know it. It just drops into your awareness, and then you're suddenly aware of X, Y, and Z. Clairsentience is feeling. It's feeling the things. So if somebody's having, I don't know, maybe a loved one comes to visit and they pass away of a heart attack, you might feel pain in your heart or something, or you might just suddenly know through the feeling sensation that there was a physical thing with the heart. Um, but they can also encompass like emotions. Now, some people call that clear empathy. So there's some different terminology here and there depending on what you're trying to talk about. But it's clairsentience. There's also other ones like taste and smell, clairgustance, clairsense. So there's a lot of different terminology out there, but it's just basically it's your spiritual senses of seeing, hearing, knowing, feeling, smelling, tasting.
I do want to add, these are all things that we all have.
Yes, we really do. Sometimes people more easily access it than others. Um, I think as children, we're more open to it. But even as children, some children are more open automatically than others. But we can learn it at any time.
I'm always, well, I love it. But when people come to me and they say, well, you're probably not going to believe me. And I'm like, try me.
Right?
I walked into the room. My grandfather had passed away, and that was his smoking room. And I walked in, and there was someone was smoking a cigar, and I smelled it. It was the same cigar. And these are not people that would ever think of it in that way, but that is, coming across something where you tap into that. It's interesting.
Yeah, very true. And so many people see visions in their mind's eye. Like they just see it all the time and they think everybody sees it. And I'm like, no, that's actually that's your spiritual gift. Like you're really able to see visions. And we can all have all of the gifts. We can work on all of it, but some come more naturally than others. So some
Yeah.
people might be really visual and they might have a harder time with the clairsentience or vice versa. But you can really work on all of it.
Well, so we all have certain gifts, and um, we can cultivate them, which is super fascinating. And how, or the reason why we're even talking about this today is because a couple weeks ago, I went to the American Visionary Art Museum, in Baltimore. And we walk in, and I am no artist, although I try to appreciate art. And lo and behold, in the atrium of this building, which is constructed like a heart, like it's in the shape of a heart, which you
Oh,
don't
wow.
necessarily know when you're in there. Um, I got some insider info on that. Um, but in the atrium, there's this, wonderful Icarus sculpture, and there's this galactic art of all kinds of interesting things. And the atrium has the name of Ingo Swann. It's his artwork. And I
Wow.
look at it, and I'm dumbfounded because I know who Ingo Swann is, and the people that are with me were artists were like, "Who the heck is Ingo Swann?" And thank goodness there was a plaque where they could read about it and him. But he was a remote viewer in the CIA's, well, Stargate program, uh, which was our country's basically psychic spies during the Cold War. Um, so it was a project. Most people have seen the movie Ghostbusters, right? Where they're the beginning of the movie, they're doing testing, um, with Bill Murray, and he's zapping the guy.
Right.
Like, but they're studying ESP, extrasensory perception. Well, that actually happened, and they were studying it at the Stanford Research Institute, and they were studying this phenomenon, and lo and behold, like many things, the CIA goes, "Well, hey, kinda interested in what you got going on over here." And so they started this remote viewing program, so it got adopted from academia into the intelligence agencies. And they were taking guys from the Army who were gifted in some way, and then they trained them to become remote viewers. Um, and they saw some pretty interesting things, and it's a very fascinating story. But if you go to Baltimore, Ingo Swann has a bunch of galactic art in the atrium of the heart. So
I totally need to go see that. I had no idea about that.
it's fascinating.
Well, I'm curious. I took a remote viewing class from John Vivanco. And so, if any of you are interested in taking a class, I highly recommend looking up John Vivanco, Vivanco, and taking a class from him. He is absolutely amazing and such a great class. And I would do it all over again if I had the time right now. I just loved it. And, but he really goes into his experience and because he also did some government work through all of that. And, yeah, as you can imagine, there are some people that they don't want to be spied on. They don't want that information getting out. So it sounded like it was kind of dangerous, but, um, yeah, not something I would necessarily want to do, but it's a fascinating topic. And, but it's very in depth. So I know, Jim, you have been coming to a development group that I run. And for a while, we were really focusing on what they call image streaming. I don't teach this at all, but I do practice the image streaming with my people because it's such a useful practice and it really helps you get out of your ego with it. So we would assign a number, a random number to a video that we were remote viewing or trying to get information about. And we would, you guys would have no idea what the topic was. It could be just about anything. And I would
Like
have
an
you do,
envelope or something.
right. Yeah. You would have no idea, or a video or
Right.
whatever.
Just a number.
I might have done a few pictures too. I liked videos because there was so much more for you to tune into and pick up on. And so we would do that and we would have a lot of fun. But, and you guys all did really well. And you all got different things, but you did really well. And what was wonderful is you had no idea what it could be about. So it really helped you get out of your ego and just get to data and understand that you were just trying to get information and not put a story to it. And when you're doing intuitive work, that's so important. And so it was a blast. And then, when we would watch the video or look at the picture and look at what we got right or wrong and try to assess Did we really feel like we were connected to the actual data when we were getting those pieces of information, or did it feel like we were off key somehow? And so it's
Well,
really good at helping us hone our skills.
I can't remember how you described it, but there was, direct hits and there were things that were like just off, like almost like a ring, like you're throwing a dart, like you're
Yeah,
close, or you would describe something, um, that was like, wow, okay, I didn't get it, but I got really close, or there was water, or I remember there was one video, I can't remember if it's in Nepal or somewhere. There's like a bus that's going under a waterfall.
oh yeah, that was so
And
scary.
I one of the things I got was an image of Tony the Tiger from like Frosted Flakes.
Oh yeah,
And I'm like, and then we watched the video and I'm like, what the heck was that have to do with anything? And I'm just like, but then as I'm looking at the video, it says the name on the bus was Tiger Tours.
right.
And I'm like, oh, I guess spirit was connecting in whatever way that you would understand something.
Well, that's the funny thing about remote viewing is it's more connected to your psychic abilities than getting messages from your guides, because you're directly tuning into a thing or an
Mm,
experience or a person, and you're trying to get direct data from the thing, as opposed to being like, hey, guides, what you got for me about this thing? It's all right, thing, what do you have for me? What can I get about the thing directly? So it's a little bit of a different practice. For me, I
mhm.
can tune in and channel my guides and get information all the time, but tuning directly into a thing is a lot harder for me for some reason. But I do, and practice really makes it really, it helps a lot.
So it's a psychic exercise. How would you define sort of remote viewing? I mean, I have a definition in my own head that I can share, but how would you
So remote viewing would
describe
be
it?
like, okay, I have this cup, right? And I want you to tell me everything you can about this cup, but you have no idea what this cup is. There's a number that represents it. Okay. And that number could represent a mountain, it could represent a person, it could be anything, but you have no idea. So you're tuning into that number, and then you're trying to get whatever information you can. But you're not saying, hey, guides, what can you tell me about this number? It's kind of cheating, really. What you're trying to do is you're trying to connect directly to the energy of this cup, what that number is representing about this thing. You're connecting directly to it, and you're just tuning into that number, and you're trying to get the information directly from that number, and you're allowing it to come through your subconscious and into your consciousness, and so that you can write it down or make notes or whatever and get the idea of what this could be. And so remote viewing really is, it's more like your psychic connection to that thing. And you can merge with things, you can get information in lots of different ways. Um, but it's just really about the connection to what that number represents instead of divine guidance, if that makes sense.
So everything is energy, and you're
Hmm.
tuning into a number that's connected to that energy, and then you're tuning into it and describing it in some way. Or
Exactly. Yeah.
my understanding, at least in my training, is your consciousness, you're expanding your consciousness to go beyond the physical body and to physically or without your body spy on secret Soviet
Oh,
installations
God.
that you can't
That's
physically get to.
but not that. We're gonna have people knocking on our door, Jim. Not that.
Well, one of the more famous examples is, the guy found the Hunt for Red October.
Yeah, there's a lot of good ones out there. I was, I've watched some documentaries, and there's different things out there. In fact, you had recommended one that was like 6 hours long that I only watched maybe the first 20 minutes of. I have to get back
Yeah.
and watch that. Do you want to talk about that real quickly? Because that was really interesting.
Yeah. There's a guy who has a podcast named Shawn Ryan It's the Shawn Ryan podcast, and he had on a guy named Joe McMoneagle, who was remote viewer 001. And I had heard his name in different things. Um, he had an extraordinary hit rate. Um, he was very skilled. Um, and he sort of details his time like being well, in the Army, and then through the development of this program, being selected, enrolled in this, CIA op, and he's being interviewed by this former Navy SEAL, Shawn Ryan, who's just it was mind blowing, and he details what they were doing, how they came to do what he did, and he had like an impeccable memory, so he could go into places that you just could never get access to, and in vivid detail write out like diagrams and sketches of God knows what devices, you know, things like that. Or if they were looking for a submarine, where's the sub? And he could locate it and tell them with pretty high accuracy where it was. And when he laughs about it, he's like, well, as I was remote viewing, like, a nuclear sub has all this energy, so I would just, like, look at the globe, see where all this energy was, and then I could, like, pinpoint it, like, pretty easily. Like, it was an easy skill, which is just kind of funny. What was another one? There was a Soviet bomber that went down in Africa, and they had all these satellites aimed at it, and they couldn't find it because it was covered by the jungle, and the remote viewers were like, "This is where it is." And so there was this race to get to the bomber, and I can't remember what it was carrying or why it was so important. But essentially, the U.S. got to the wreckage before the Soviets. That was the big deal. And in an interview with Jimmy Carter, who was president at the time, he sort of slips up, and they're like, "How did you find this plane?" And he's like, "Well, psychic guys found it for us." I think they had to change the name of the program after that.
That's funny.
But
Well,
that
I
was
don't
just a
know.
little bit about that, like, his experience and how a lot of it goes, we talk about expansion of consciousness, but learning how to meditate and tune into your energy of your body and your mind and your consciousness and go beyond your physical body and, into your super conscious mind.
One of the things that we did in the class is we really uh, had a lot of practice in getting more into a theta state. And so sometimes you can listen to binaural beats. So we all had our earphones on and we were listening to binaural beats, getting into theta. And and then they would have us practice. I think there were 6 different symbols. It's been a couple years since I took the class, but I think there were 6 different symbols. And you would just practice them so that it was getting ingrained. And they were really simple symbols. They would get ingrained into your subconscious so that when you start tuning into a number, symbols will start coming to you. And then you can immediately write down the symbols and then tune into each symbol. So let's say there was like a whale in water, you might get the symbol of a subject and you might get the symbol of water. And then you can tune into the subject symbol and then you could tune into the water symbol. And because both of those things will give you different information. And so one reading, looking into one number when you're in the class could take, well, me, it could take hours. I'm sure John or whoever else is really professional at it could do it really quickly. But you do all that, you get as much information as you can and you draw pictures, like you're really diving into what this data is showing you. And so it's very deep and very uh, profound what can come through and what you end up coming up with. It's just fascinating. One time he did a homework and I was getting I kept getting like a circular motion. I drew a circle and I would draw arrows like a circular motion. And I just kept getting that. So I just kept drawing it, right? And then I would get other things and moving fast, or, there were just different things. I kept getting like the word circular, I think it was, and just anything about circles and energy, a lot of energy. I just kept getting that. And then I suddenly got stop. And so I wrote that down and I turned in the homework. He was like, "Oh my gosh, you nailed it." And it was a tornado. It was a really big tornado. And it was wiping all kinds of things out and moving, moving, moving. And then it just stopped and stood still. And so that was a part of the news story, was it that it stopped and then just there it was. And
Mhm.
so that was so fascinating. And one of the things that and I was really good at this in the beginning of the class. I was so good. I was nailing it. And one of the things that they say is, a lot of people who are good at this, they're going to be really good. And then their ego is going to get in the way. And then they're going to really be bad at it for a while. And you
Mm.
have to keep practicing until you work through all that. And then you're good again at it. And so yeah, that was, kind of rough on the ego there when you suddenly aren't getting any of it right and you were getting it all right before. I was like, I don't know. I wonder if they're like doing that on purpose to just crush our ego and they're like running some sort of energy to make us not good at it anymore. I don't know, but it was fun. And
Did they talk
really
about how to combat that?
practice. You just keep working through it. You ignore that you're wrong and you keep practicing and you keep trying to tune in, you keep trying to align and working the skills, working your subconscious and getting into theta. Just it's almost like you're breaking down old bad habits and building the new ones. And so it's almost like you have to learn a whole new way to really get the data. And when you're really good at it, your ego is like, "Man, I'm good." And
Yeah,
then you're not.
it's
So,
interesting how to work
yeah.
with that, because essentially with your consciousness, you're trying to, like, expand beyond that, right? Beyond your egoic mind and where you have ideas and preconceived notions about things, or you're trying to interpret stuff that, you could be getting a hit and have no idea what it means, and you're just sort of expected to write it down and see what happens. Well, I guess the remote viewers had, like, handlers, so they were like they might have known something about the target and then were kind of distilling the information that was coming through, is my understanding.
Yeah, yeah, and one of the things John had said is you wanna be really careful who you allow to do that with you because you can remote view some scary things, and, that's not always that's not always good. He had some good stories about things that he was asked to view, and it just wasn't positive, and,
Yeah.
so yeah, so in his class, he only does really positive experiences, and it was just I don't want to go too much into detail about what he had us view in case someone who's listening wants to
I'm
take his course.
curious. Yeah, like, I
Yeah,
wanna ask you, but then at the same time, like, I probably don't wanna
yeah.
know.
I think I remember him saying that he used different ones, in different classes, so that people who took it a second time wouldn't, have the same experience. But he does reuse them, from what I remember. So yeah, I don't want to give it away too much, but
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing with remote viewing or even just being intuitive in general is you want to be in a receiving state and you want to allow your subconscious to bring the information through without thinking about it. You just want to have it flow. You want to be the conduit for the information to come through. And but the moment we start trying to analyze what we're getting, we're out of that space, and now we're more into our conscious awareness and analyzing instead of receiving data. So, as best as you can, you stay in the receiving mode and you allow it to come through. And then you're just consciously aware of, okay, I'm feeling this thing in my body, write that down. So you're not really processing, you're just in an awareness kind of state. Um, so that's really the
Now,
goal.
when I first was kind of practicing with it, I don't recall having a specific type process, but there is training, and funny enough, it involves binaural beats. Um, that's part of the training process because it helps um, synchronize the hemispheres in your brain. And there was a process where you go through this protocol and you learn certain skills to um, start exploring the outer limits of your consciousness. And it's like level, 1, level 2, level 3, and it involves energy and meditating a certain way to cultivate your energy in a way that you can work with it and travel and stuff like that, which I did not know. I did not know how they did that. Is that something that your class got into?
What specifically? Like, describe that more specifically.
So, like, specifically, like, the remote viewers that were operating out of Fort Meade, um, would travel down to the Monroe Institute, and there's a place where they hemisync is one of the terms, but there's, like, the gateway process where it's a systematic training of your mind and your consciousness and how to open up, and there's a very specific protocol on how to do that.
Yeah, yeah. No, he just had us listen to binaural beats. He didn't really go, from what I remember, too deeply into that. But it's funny that you mentioned the Monroe Institute. When I first woke up and started becoming aware of all of this, um, that was the first thing I read was a book about that. So fascinating.
Yeah, no, I mean, I had no idea
And
that
that's in
they were
Virginia.
involved in that.
We should take a trip.
Who knew?
Right?
Which is well, here's one. I didn't know. I think it's in Virginia Beach. Isn't that also where Edgar Casey's institute is?
If I remember right, I don't think it's Virginia Beach, but I might be wrong. Again, it's been a while since I read the book and I haven't
Huh,
really looked into going in there since then. But yeah, Edgar Casey is in Virginia Beach, but I think the Monroe Institute, I don't think it's Virginia Beach. I can't remember where exactly, but I don't think so.
mhm.
I don't know for sure.
Well, that's where Joe McMoneagle said he was training, and now I think he is an instructor there. But their use of binaural beats to access higher consciousness.
Yeah, I remember in the book I was reading, they were talking about how they would actually go into the future and see future events and then be able to bring that back. And they would even have partners and they would go and see the same events. So
Yeah.
that's just, I don't know, fascinating, Jim. I love
Well,
this stuff.
that's kind of where I'm at in the program is you go to a place where time, like we're in time space, but you transcend time space
Right.
with your consciousness, which might blow your mind if you're hearing that for the first time.
Right. I know. I know. Because supposedly it's all happening about the same time anyway. So
Yeah, it's very hard to wrap your head around.
it really is.
But that's definitely where that process takes you. Um, it's happening now, with uh, hypnotherapy and hypnotists, not just, I guess, the idea of reincarnation, which most people believe in, by the way. Um, it's curiosity almost, like, oh, I can look at a past life, but you can also look at a future life. You can do future life progressions, and so which is, I think, maybe even more scary for people.
Probably because most people want to be done. They're like, I'm done after this life. I don't want to come back.
Wait, this keeps happening?
Yeah, I don't know. I've had those few thoughts a few times.
One of the things when I started meditating more, I think these things would happen where I could travel into different periods of time, and I was trying to figure out, like, what is going on? Like, how can I do that? How can you travel into and be in this moment like you're there, like, literally observing everything in vivid detail, and, eventually, you know, learning more about consciousness and why that could happen and how it could be helpful for people to heal from different things or to understand, um, the fact that you can do that. You can travel to certain places in time or back in time, or I would I don't know. I would say, like, I have this high skill level with this, but you can some people can jump into certain timelines, or other people's timelines and sort of scan things and see certain things, which is also very fascinating. I don't know
Yeah,
if
I've
you
done
can do
that.
that, or I'm sure
Yeah.
you know people that can, but
It's easier for me to do it for somebody else than it is for me to do it for myself, but I've done that
uh-huh,
before. Yeah.
yeah. But I mean, essentially, that's what you're doing, no?
Pretty
You know
much. Yeah. And well, for me, I ask their guides to show me the timeline. And like let's say they have two options. Option A is job one, option B is job two. And which I think the last time I did this was for somebody with a job situation, and they were like, I don't know which one's best. And so I just tuned in and was like, all right, well, it feels like both have pros and cons. So in option one, this is what I am seeing with that as a timeline. And option two, this is what I'm seeing. And so I was able to see that. I saw visions and everything with it. I remember that really clearly. But that's a lot harder for me to do for myself, though. So I've always been interested in why that is. But I think it's because my ego must be in the way.
yeah. Now, if you hadn't brought it up, I don't know if I would have ever sought out to learn more about it. Is there a practical application to it, do you think, to remote
For
viewing?
looking into your future or for
Or
remote
just
viewing?
learning more about remote viewing and why it might be helpful or interesting?
I think it's really helpful, even if you aren't planning to do this for a living, because it helps you get really connected to your subconscious and it helps you get out of your ego. It helps you get out of your own way and also opens you up to what you're capable of. I think it's a good thing for anybody to take. And the more you hone your spiritual skills, the better. Now, I would say if you have no interest in this whatsoever, you probably aren't even watching us.
Right.
But, for those people, I wouldn't recommend it. If it's not something that interests you, it's just not your calling or your thing. But if you have an interest in it and, it's a fascinating thing to you, I would dive in and take a class. I
And what was the name of
highly
the guy who you
recommend John Vivanco.
John Bavard.
John,
Was he local, or did you have to
no,
do
I
that
think he was in
online?
Washington State, and he had it over Zoom, and he had a really good group of people. It was a really awesome class.
Uh, yeah, there is, at least with the gateway process from the Monroe Institute, you're the most important thing, and one of the first things you do is you set the intention um, to sort of learn and to expand and to open up. Like, that's where it starts. I don't know if you guys did that, but that's one
Yeah,
big
I do
part
remember
about
him getting us into that state. But
so the
I think that's
power
also why he would ask us before doing homework to make sure that we did the binaural theta beats for a good 15, 20 minutes beforehand to get into that state.
oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, time-wise, I think in the gateway process, there is probably there's a preparation process where you start to kind of clear yourself and your energy of anything that's negative, like fear or doubt or something like that. And so, how they do it is you have like an energy box and with a tight lead heavy weight, and you put all your fears and anything that might hold you back, or ego, and you stow it away. So you separate yourself from that, and then you start to. It's almost. Are you aware of like the Merkaba meditations and those things?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, where it's utilizing visualization and energy and light to kind of create this sphere or this geometric shape. The Merkaba is that like a what is the well, it's just called the Merkaba. I don't
Well,
know.
it's the
But it's
Star of David or the six pointed star.
six pointed star. Okay. Um, and so there's some aspect of that, and then, but it's while you're doing that, you're also setting the intention and you declare it, um, which is interesting. I don't know. I could actually read it if that would be helpful. Do you think that would be interesting?
Sure. Yeah.
Um, so this is called, I'm sure you could probably just look this up, but the Gateway Affirmation. Um, I am more than my physical body because I am more than physical matter. I deeply desire to expand, to experience, to know, to understand, to control, and to use such greater energies and energy systems as may be beneficial and constructive to me and to those near and close to me. Also, I deeply desire the help and cooperation, the assistance, the understanding of those individuals whose wisdom, development, and experience are equal or greater than my own. So that's the gateway affirmation. So that's part of the preparation to when you start developing higher levels of skills. So I think there's 8 sort of courses total, but they all the skills build on one another. Um, if you're interested, they offer, I know on Spotify, HemiSync, so HEMISYNC, at least a couple of the meditations for free on Spotify. I think they're free. Um, when I first heard them, it was kind of tuning into binaural beats. I almost looked at it like it was you were cheating, like you could use these and drop into a certain meditative state without having to like work at it. But I think it's helpful that to know that they're there and they can assist you in that way. Um, but it is sort of along the lines of why we do this podcast and the expansion of consciousness is to really like the great, how I see it, the great frontier, right? Learning how sort of expansive you are. Like you're not just this, human being. Like your consciousness can expand throughout the universe.
Oh, yeah. It's amazing.
But I don't know, Jen, anything else we could add with remote viewing that might be interesting to anyone listening?
Just that it's a lot of fun. And I would not, if you do learn remote viewing, please do not just try to remote view people that you know or don't know. People's privacy is really important. And
Yeah, hopefully there's some
yeah,
ethical considerations here.
yeah, seriously, ethics, please. But yeah, no, it's fascinating. I think you'd be amazed at what you can pick up and how quickly you'll learn these skills.
Um, yeah, from my own personal experience, the thought of doing this was like, okay, this is a waste of time. Like, I'm not going to be able to do this. This is impossible. Like, who could possibly do this? Um, but I actually have seen documentaries and TV shows where they get trained. They'll train like the host of the show, and then they'll give them a coordinate, and they'll do it, and they'll get hits, and they're like, I had no idea I could do this. It's like,
Right? I know. Yeah, highly recommend it.
yeah, all right,
And it's funny too. One of the things I'll say this too, because it can also help you. One of the things that John said he would do is he would assign a question that he would have, or that, some people, I've hired him a couple times to remote view a question for me. And he would get a jar and write the question with the number on it and put it into a jar, and then pick up the jar and pick something randomly out of the jar. So he would have an idea of what was in the jar, but he would have no idea what he was picking. And then they would remote view that. And so you would actually answer questions for yourself that way. And so, like I was saying earlier, sometimes it's really hard to get information for yourself because your ego is attached to the outcome a lot of times. And
hmm
so if you have something really important that you want information about, it's harder to get because you want things to happen a certain way, or your fear might get in the way, or your excitement, or whatever it is. You just kind of get in the way. So with this, at the very least, you'd be able to put it into a jar and pick something out at random. And it might take you a few weeks or a month to get to the question that you wanted to answer in that moment, but you'll get it, and you'll get it from a much more neutral space. So that you can definitely help yourself in learning things like this.
What got your fancy into taking that class originally? Like what
I watched a video on John Vivanco. And I've been into intuitive development and things already, and I teach intuitive development, but this just took it all to a whole nother level and got me to trust myself, my deeper intuitive senses even more, and
uh
really hone the skills. So when I saw the video, so yeah, look up videos on John Vivanco or remote viewing in general and other people. And Ingo Swan, there's books out there. There's so many resources and things to dive into it and see if it really is something you'd be interested in, because I never thought I would take a class in it. And then when I was watching him, my thought was, I wonder if he teaches. And within a minute later, he was like, I'm doing a class. So I did go to his website and signed up for the class. Yeah.
yeah, I mean there's all these synchronicities I think that start to pop up, you know, in your life when you are curious about something and it's something that you should learn about or would have fun doing.
Yeah, that's the key. Have fun with it, because when your ego gets in the way, it's going to want you to be perfect, and you're not going to be perfect. And that's the point. Like, you're
Yeah.
working the skills that you need to work. So it's good.
Yeah.
Very
I
humbling.
well, there's value in that too, right?
There is.
Humility is a character strength. Yeah, no, when I first came across it, at first I'm like, you know, this is silly. But then, okay, if it's so silly, why is the US government pumping money into this program?
Right? With high accuracy. And these people are amazingly accurate.
Yeah. We don't have to worry about remote viewers anymore because they closed the program,
Right.
allegedly, if you
Yeah.
believe that.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, before we get canceled,
Yeah.
I love my life.
Yeah, I know, right? But we're
Um,
not doing it, so, whatever.
yeah, right? Um, well, thank you, Jen. You know, this is a fun topic to talk about, just among other interesting things that come across our awareness that I think people might enjoy listening to. So hopefully you got something out of this. And I would say if you want to learn more, uh, there's the meditations by Neural Beats on Spotify, or you probably find them. I know I've been using binaural beats in some of my own meditations and hypnosis tracks that I've been putting on YouTube.
Yeah.
Um, sometimes I'm pretty sure like I'm writing like you know what hertz they are, and but that's what they are binaural beats. Um, so there's different frequencies and different tunes with that. Some might be more pleasant than others. And then HemiSync. And I don't think they're the only ones anymore. I think BrainSync is another. But you can go check out some of their products and what they have to offer and start exploring some of these things on your own because they are very interesting. They have a number of varied programs that you can learn about.
Yeah, awesome. I definitely do it. And Jim, give me those links so I can put them in the description.
Sure, will do. All right. And also, if you are curious, that Joe McMoneagle interview with Shawn Ryan came out maybe 2 weeks ago, but it's the Shawn Ryan podcast. So you can check that out too.
Yeah, send me that link too, and I'll make sure that gets in there.
Excellent. All right.
All
Jen,
right.
thank you very much.
Thank you guys.
All right. Yeah. Thank you very much. Till
Bye.
next time. See ya.
We are so grateful that you joined us. Check out the description to learn more about us and also for additional resources to help you on your journey.